we talking about? What are you catching? I feel like I should interview you. Like,
If you want, AI search was a big topic we were talking about. That's pretty relevant for what I'm doing.
yeah?
Yeah.
What ways?
Well, running a digital publication, I mean, one of the ways that we measure success is how many people are coming to the site, what's our organic traffic, and now a lot of people aren't clicking on links. So what do you measure now to determine your success?
Yeah, that is a very complicated and challenging situation.
Yeah.
You know, as we were talking before we got on camera, right? I was asking a lot of people late last year about this premise, and I was just like, hey, how often do you scroll past the AI overview or click through? And that time I was still talking about in terms of Google, because I noticed that in April and May, Google switched to the AI overviews, and Google's still owning 90% of all search traffic, even still today. Right, I was like, oh man, this is like an oh shit moment here where like, hey, and so I kept talking to all these executives late last year, and I say, how often do you scroll past that overview? And 98% of them said almost never. This is almost 70 people. And then I would have, my response was always one of two things. It was like, okay, then you're in agreement that AI is picking the winners, or two, organic traffic is dying, if not dead. Like, I get the whole debate, it's not dead. I agree with that fundamentally. But as a dominant channel and as a way to, clearly track, attribution, I mean, that's seriously challenged right now. And then for publications like yours, for example, it's even worse, right? Because as humans, we search for answers, not links. I never put in a search so I can get 20 blue links to then spend the next 2 days to figure out whether or not what you're talking about is relevant to what I was asking. And so then you start to layer on, to your point, attribution. What do you measure, right? So I think that there's a lot of fundamental issues, and then folks will come back to me and they were like, hey, have you solved it? And I was like, I've not solved anything. I don't think anyone has solved it, right? Like, and that's the problem. It's like people need to be like open and honest of the challenges when it comes to AI search. How do you show up there? What do you have to do, right? There's some folks that are saying that you need to have 3 to 10x the amount of content, basically flood the zone, right? If you want to have a better opportunity. I run a company, Walk West, and I tell folks all the time, we're going to do 3 things really well. Make sure you're seen, heard, and cited, CITED, by humans and machines alike for maximum results, right? And people come asking me, what is that about? I was like, the cited, CITED, it means that for AI search to pick you up, you need to be talked about by other folks other than your own blog.
Yeah.
If no one else is citing and referencing you, you don't have, an opportunity there, right? And then we'll start talking about things like, I would call it the filter bubble of how you've personalized an experience with these large language models. And that's the other thing that people aren't talking about. It's like, this isn't broad-based. It's like, imagine if you walked into a CVS store or a Walgreens, right? It's not like you're trying to get a Hallmark card, right, for a broad audience. Imagine if you walked in and every card was personalized for everyone that walked through the door.
Yeah.
That's effectively what you're being asked to do now.
Yeah.
Because it's going to curate the experience. So, the challenge is real. So I feel for you. Right.
Well, I hate to say it too, because I manage a website and I want to support media and these companies. But when I see AI overviews, if it answers my question, I don't click the link. One thing I heard, though, I read about was one way that you can track how much your brand is showing up in these AI searches. And I know there's tools that tell you how many citations you show up in, but it is more to look at how often your brand name is showing up, and that gives you a better sense of how people are finding you and your brand. Now, for me, that's not as helpful, because if you type in vector, different company shows up. You got a gun company, so you have to be a little more specific, like maybe like vector news, and then it will come up.
Right.
But for other websites, I think that's a more helpful approach.
And that means that you have to have some level of brand recognition already on the front end.
Yes.
Right. So to your point, it's like, AI is very good at creating the sentiment analysis, right, and understanding, and it's not like a keyword game, right? It's more of like, you and I can ask very different questions on its surface, but if the sentiment is the same, then we should directionally get a similar type of response. And I would put in air quotes similar, because I could put in the same exact question 3 times in a row and get different responses. And that's that part where, as a society, where we're not comfortable just yet, is the probabilistic nature of AI versus the deterministic kind of history that we've all kind of grown to know and love, whether we knew it or not, right? Kind of a decision tree model where I know if I put in these keywords, it's likelihood that I'm gonna get the same thing over and over and over again. That's just not how it works. Again, now if you layer in, to your point, these tools, which I'm very appreciative that folks are trying, right, to figure out how you show up. But again, what's not being taken into consideration though is what happens if I've, effectively, all of these have memory functions to some extent, right? Whether it's ChatGPT has that long-term memory, then you have Perplexity has their memory, and then you have Claude with their, large context windows. There's some type of memory that's going to be included. So if that memory is also influencing how the search results come back, I don't know how as a brand or how relevant, hey, this data said that we're showing up X number of times. Okay, for whom?
Yeah, there's so many variables.
There's so many variables, right, to consider. Like, what does that mean? Okay, broad base, for what words? And then, great, I showed up. Now, how often are they still clicking through? Right, now what they will say, and which I will agree with, is if you show up in AI search and someone clicks through, right, they're a much more highly qualified, ready to transact type of visitor versus like the casual browser. I will agree with that. But you have to first show up there. Then you have to be relevant enough and have enough meat for me to want to click through. And then you have to create enough of an experience for me to want to stay and get value, right? And that's very challenging for a publication, but it's challenging for any website, So it is very challenging. We can also start to talk about B2C and what's happening on the commerce side of things.
Well, before we jump into that, I'm just curious what your thoughts are then. Because there's always been SEO companies, but now there's these, AI SEO companies that are promising that they can help you show up in AI search. What do you think about that?
It's a bit, I don't know if disingenuous is the right word, right? If you can do that, amazing. I don't understand how a company that is not actually clearly aligned and understands the foundational model, how you could actually do that, right? How can you actually tell me, and that was the path I was going on last year, until I came to a point and I was like, wait a minute. If trying to keep up with the algorithms is whack-a-mole, I don't know what the analogy is for this. Because one, it's not like you're just saying, Google owns 90% of search, so I only need to focus on the keywords and relate it to their algorithm. Now you're saying, hey, Perplexity may look at it different than Claude, that may look at it different than ChatGPT, that may look at it different than Google or Gemini, right? Oh, so now you have these other views and folks will say, well, Google still owns 90% of search traffic. Yeah, today, right? But part of the reason why they changed their whole business model is because they realized if they had a Netflix meets Blockbuster moment. And if we don't change our model, we're gonna end up going the way of the dinosaur, right? And so they went to the same model because the experience is better. I search for answers, not links.
Yeah.
And so I think that some of these companies, right, that are saying, hey, we're going to help you figure out how you show up or how you're being cited, even that is not taken into full context, the large language model's context, right? And so I applaud them for trying, but I think that people need to be a little bit more open and honest that we're all still trying to figure this stuff out.
Yeah, definitely. And it's constantly changing.
Yes.
So the consumer side of things, what are you thinking there?
Well, I mean, if you think about it, like I was talking to a group of founders a few weeks back and I kept asking them, it was about 10 founders. And I was like, hey, what are your challenges, right? Monetization strategies, go-to-market, awareness, how do we show up? Like, how do people know about us, right? Because you have an unknown brand. And so if you're a retailer or if you're a mid-market or a smaller player who doesn't have brand effects, doesn't have that level of awareness, it's very challenging, right? And so what I kept asking these founders, I said, hey, why do you think the CEO of Shopify said back in April that everybody needs to lean in to AI, right? And, you get some of the stuff that people say, well, productivity and this and that. It's like, yeah. I said, but I think he also realized that if he doesn't quickly align himself with an OpenAI or, because they created that partnership with OpenAI, some of these retailers could end up being simply fulfillment or warehouse centers, right? No different than, say, an Amazon experience, of which I don't really know or care where the order came from.
Yeah.
It came from Amazon from my perspective. So if you can imagine, if you're a Shopify retailer, and me, I wear a lot of Jordan tennis shoes, and I'm in OpenAI or Perplexity or others, and I'm looking for Jordan tennis shoes, I don't care where it came from.
Yeah.
Okay, if I don't care where it came from, how can you ever influence cross-sell, upsell? What data do you have on these customers? So this is my hypothesis, is that what they understood at Shopify and what they did a great job was they actually created a partnership with OpenAI so that all of the merchant data and things get to flow through, right? Which gives them a greater likelihood of showing up in the AI search, right? Still doesn't solve for the fact that I still may never know where those shoes came from.
Yeah.
Which means you will have I have no loyalty to your storefront anymore. And I think that it creates a better consumer experience, right? But it's more similar to an Amazon type experience. Mm-hmm. But it's going to be very challenging if historically, if you're on the brand side or the marketing side, and you're saying, hey, how many people are coming to our site? And it's like, I don't know. I know how many products we sold last month. Yeah. Well, how many cross-sell, upsell? Yeah, it doesn't really work that way anymore, right? Because if they never get there, you can't influence that. And so I do think that it's going to be some challenging times for folks pretty quickly here.
Yeah, I mean, I think for a lot of people, the challenge comes to you still have those people up above you wanting to know that you're putting money to good use and you're getting return on investment. But now everything's changing and you can't use the same metrics. Like you said, it's not about site visits anymore. Yeah. You can still show how many products you're selling, but the brand recognition isn't the same thing.
That is the challenge. And I think that marketers, and I run a marketing company. I call it a growth acceleration company, right? Because marketing has, historically been viewed as this kind of fluffy thing. And I say, no, we don't market anything. We help companies grow. And what I always tell marketers, I'm like, look, if you want a strategic seat at the table, you have to be aligned to the P&L and understand what matters to the rest of your C-suite leaders, right? And it's going to be revenue growth. It's going to be lower acquisition costs. They're going to be all these other things. All these vanity metrics that you boxed the world into didn't matter 5 years ago to most executives. And they certainly aren't going to matter. Like, people are like, hey man, you've got me now trained on MQLs and SQLs and click through and CAC and this and that. And now all of a sudden you're telling me none of that is the same or matters anymore? Now what, Greg? What do I do now? Right? How do I tell, that I'm making progress? And I think that it's going to probably take about 6 more months for people to kind of level set on what are the true metrics, right? But that's going to be challenging and dangerous times. What I've always told marketers, I say, align yourself with what matters to the CFO, what matters to your head of sales, what matters to your CEO, right? Start with the end in mind, understand what are the goals, understand what's the revenue, your profitability, all those things, and then work backwards from there. But stop trying to push back everyone into this box of the vanity metrics, right? Because you're losing them and you're losing your position at the table. Now you layer in AI, like, yes, new set of tools, which is a different problem. I try to explain to folks, I'm like, so you have a director of marketing. How are they supposed to understand the 15 new tools that came out last week, the 30 that are going to come out next week, and all of the challenges that are being faced? I was like, it's just not, and it's not their fault. The entire organization doesn't understand those things.
Yeah.
And so it's going to take a collaborative effort, and it's going to take a level of faith and investment, right, for the folks that want to win. What I'm seeing right now is folks are taking the position of, all right, until we figure it out, we're just going to cut costs as much as possible. And those organizations will have a short kind of window to kind of course correct. But the organizations that lean in and use these tools and understand the lead flow crisis, as I describe it with AI search, we haven't even talked about email, right? As I said, cold emails, you'll never convert me. There's 2 forms of cold email, scam and spam. It's just what it is, right? And if I'm spending half my time trying to figure out, is this person trying to scam me or is this just spam?
Yeah.
You're not going to convert me if that's my mindset and everyone else's mindset when they open their inbox, right? And so I call that the lead flow crisis. So all these things, the marketers have to really double down and understand the technology. If you want to sit at the table, don't make it an IT project, right? Partner with the IT folks, partner with the HR folks. It's the greatest upskilling in our lifetime. It affects every single human on the planet, which means every single employee within an organization, right? I talk to folks about AI adoption all the time, and I keep telling business leaders, and I call out C-suite leaders and CEOs, I'm like, stop only talking about the business goals you want to achieve. In the absence of information as humans, we go to the negative. And so if this affects every single human, you need to explain to all of your employees where they fit in the story arc. Because if you don't, all they're actually hearing is AI is coming to replace me. And so now you have 90% of the organization rolling against you, right? And in a world in which I would historically only have to worry about 1 or 2 potential saboteurs in IT or in marketing, now I got 90% of the folks saying, I hear you, Greg, you want to go do this, this, and this. I don't know where I fit in this. And so, no, I'm not going to help you get there. And so what I tell folks all the time is like, look, when it comes to AI adoption, you got to do 3 things. Make it personal, make it fun, make it safe, right? Because I'm not going to give 2 shits about your business outcome if you haven't told me how this is going to make my quality of work and my quality of life better. If you can start with that, then you can tell me whatever you want for your goals and I'm all in. And so we have to switch our mindsets, not just as marketers, but not just as technologists, but as humans and leaders and business folks in general. Get back to what matters to your people and then the rest will follow, not the other way around.
Well, what's interesting from an employee perspective too is that research has shown that of the people that are surveyed during these surveys, the majority of employees, they want to learn about AI, they want to have these skills, but their companies are falling short in teaching them.
1000%. I talk about this all the time. Like if you think about late last year, early this year, all the headlines, all the conversations like, oh, just be curious, just go be curious, go play with this. I said, look, I got 3 young kids. I said, that's like me trying to teach them about fire, right? By throwing matches and gasoline on the floor and say, go nuts. I said, what do you think is going to happen? They're either going to burn themselves or do nothing. That's what's happening inside of your organization. You told them to go be curious. They're like, man, I don't know what that means. Can I put this data in here? Should I? I'm just going to do nothing, right? And so what I tell folks is you have to invest in real training. I'm out there helping train folks. We're running a kind of a gamification. We're making it personal, fun, and safe at Walk West, right? We have, hashtag certified the Walk West way where people get a new certification. We have a leaderboard. We split the whole company into teams. I'm on a team. They wouldn't let me roll over all of my certifications, so I had to get 7 new certifications so I can, be a part of the team.
Yeah.
But I tell folks, I'm like, you have to invest in training these folks and not just cursory academic training. How can you help them within their environment, within their industry, within your company? Make it very specific, the training, right? But once they start to have their own individual aha moments, then you can start to position all the other great things you want to do as an organization.
Yeah.
Right? Like they're focused on, look at all the cool and great things I can build with these tools. And I'm over here like, that sounds cool, but you're not looking into the impact that it has on your business, right? And so how do you navigate AI search, right? Going back to the seen, heard, and cited. So people ask me, they were like, well, how are you doing? So we're growing as a business 30, 40% year over year. In probably the most challenging economic times I've, been a leader of a company in the last 15, 20 years, and that includes the pandemic, right? Now, I had a competitive advantage because I was running an e-commerce and digital marketing company in the pandemic, right? It's like, oh, all the stores are closing? Yeah. Okay. Okay, as much as I hated the pandemic and all what it did to, humanity and society, we sold our company in 2020 when I was a co-CEO of Blue Acorn ICI to Emphasis. And even talking to I remember talking to the board and our bankers, they were like, hey, do you guys still want to go into process? I'm like, well, the stores are closing. We went into process in February. Had to close the office in March. Went through the whole process remote and then sold, exited in 2020 in October, right? But again, we understood where the market was. I'm always trying to be on the forefront of emerging tech and understand where the market is going, right? And now we're in this AI lane. It's just a different set of rules and challenges, right? So, being here at the AI4 Conference, I'm excited to see all of the brands and see all of the new entrants and all the new cool tools and platforms and things. But I am also highly concerned as to how many will actually make it through, given all of the dynamics that AI, there's all the capabilities that it has for your business idea, right, to come to creation. But then it has all the other fundamental business challenges, whether you're AI business or not, around awareness and visibility and how do you transact, how do you show up, how do you create brand effects, how do you get there?
Yeah.
Right. And so what I tell folks all the time, is, we were at the Adobe conference, for example, and I was talking about this whole lead flow crisis back in March, and I had the same conversations, and they were like, well, we're not seeing the drop off. I was like, I'm not worried about Nike. I'm not worried about people that already have brand recognition.
Yeah.
Yeah, if someone explicitly says, I'm looking for a new pair of Nikes, of course they're going to show up,
Yeah.
right? But if you're a new entrant and you have this new cool shoe concept and idea, and it's got the most radical technology in it, blah, 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 and nobody, and you're, shoe X, right? Or Acme shoe, how do you find Acme shoe? You're just not going to surface the same way that you were able to pre-AI search, going to the AI overviews. And so it's very challenging.
Well, I think that's what's different about AI compared to other things. I mean, it just has its hand in everything, every industry, every department. I mean,
No one's safe.
Everything's changing. Yeah.
Everything's changing. Everything's changing and nothing's changing at the same time.
Yeah.
Right? And what I mean by that is everything is changing except for our hearts and minds just yet. Right? I try to explain to folks when you go to these conferences or you go into major cities, it feels like everybody's talking about AI. It feels like everyone's using it. I said, that is a bubble, right? You go to middle America, when you go outside of these bubbles, I say, think about it this way. There were reports last year that ChatGPT or OpenAI used as much energy as the nation of Barbados at 5% adoption. Okay, what happens when we get to 20% adoption?
Yeah.
Okay, right? But if it's at 5% adoption, that means there's a lot of folks that aren't actually using it. A lot, right? And we have to acknowledge that. And the speed of change is so fast, right? That we're all going through this, future shock or loss aversion, right? It's just too exponentially fast relative to, previous tech shifts, right? And what I would say to folks is like, you used to have to, upskill and relearn new things every, call it 5 to 10 years, more like 7 to 10 years, right? Then that started to shorten through the cloud era and things, all right, maybe every 5 to 7 years. Then the pandemic said, hey, we can do things a lot faster than we said we could do on the tech side, right? And so that shortened a little bit. Now you're talking about things that are significantly changing every 5 to 7 months, if not shorter, right? And so when people ask me, like, why do you have 25 Gen AI certifications? Like, because things keep changing. Yeah. I keep learning more, right? Other things keep getting introduced. There are vertical specific things that make sense. There are horizontal and organizational things around, hey, specific to HR, specific to go-to-market, specific to marketing, right? These things have nuanced differences. And to your point, everything is being touched, right? But now the expectations haven't significantly met the times. And that's what I mean by everything has changed, but nothing has changed, right? If everything on the front end has changed, but your expectations, then we have a problem. And that's the problem that we're living in right now. And so I have my own podcast called AI Voice of Victim. And I tell people all the time, either you can ride the wave or get crushed by it. There is no, I'm just going to stand still, right? And I fundamentally don't want this to happen, but that's where we are right now. And people don't know it, but they're just marching off the edge of a cliff. And I was like, maybe there's something great at the bottom of that cliff. I don't know.
Well, I think part of that, like you said, there's just so much out there, so much changing so quickly. I think people get overwhelmed, and it's 100%. Like, where do I look? What should I pay attention to? What can I ignore? And they're so afraid of making the wrong move that they don't make any move.
100%. I think, and that's what I call people being frozen, right? Or kind of stuck in, just standing in the middle of the street. My dad's a retired truck driver, and when he was teaching me about cars, he's a good old boy, right? But he would say, look, son, he said, just keep it between the ditches and don't stop in traffic, right? And that's my point. Is like, look, everybody's going this way. Just stay between the ditches and keep moving. Yeah. Right? But what I would say is that there is a lot of noise. There is a lot of tools, but the way I describe AI, natural language processing, prompt engineering, how do you talk to the machines? It's a new form of typing, right? I learned to type in 1995. I got my computer science degree in 2000. I thought it was a joke when I was learning to type on a typewriter my senior in high school. And truthfully, I only took the course because it was like 6th period, and then I could leave a few minutes early and go to the gym and go practice either basketball or baseball. That was my passion at the time, right? But I'm so much more thankful for it because I learned to type. I was able to blaze through any application, any software, because that's how you're going to interface. There's no different from a prompt engineering perspective. All of the tools, no matter what the application is, it will have some level of chatbot or prompting or understanding of how to basically type to the machine. And so the people that understand sooner how to type, right? They understand prompt engineering, not to the level that I, use it, but to just communicate with the machine and what you can get out of it. Doesn't matter what the application will be. And so my advice for folks are get trained in the most basic level large language model, whether your flavor, if your company is a Microsoft company, then sure, Copilot, go get some training. If it's a Google shop, then Gemini makes sense, right? Or ChatGPT, if you're just using it personal and you're trying to figure things out, right? They all work the same way, right? There's nothing fundamentally different. And so get the base level of training and understanding, because once you start to understand how you communicate with the machine, the things that you can do, then it's going to be like typing all over again, right? Then you're going to be able to say, okay, this new application came in. This is how I want to prompt it. Like, it doesn't really get me, it doesn't understand. But the other thing that we've kind of talked about today is just the large language models in general are going to just be eating up a bunch of these other tools and capabilities, right? And so as Sam Altman says, I'm paraphrasing here, but you better pay attention to my roadmap. I don't think people are paying attention to both the roadmap and the speed at which these things are being rolled out. And because it's such a competition to the race to AGI, they're all just consuming and saying, oh yeah, well, we're gonna do voice too. Well, we're also gonna do video. Oh, you can also generate images. Oh, you can create cool decks, me too. You can create front end, we can do code, right? And so they're all converging within 5% of the same capabilities. So it doesn't really matter, just, grapple on to one of the large language models, Claude, Perplexity, ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, right? Learn the basics around there, learn how to maximize those things, and then start to move in some of the other applications and start to advance. And then get more focused on like, okay, for this business case, I am a marketer, what should I use? Oh, maybe I want to get into Figma and then their AI capabilities. Or maybe I'm gonna go to market, professional, and I want a transcription and better notes and how I can use this. Okay, maybe I want to go use Gong, or I want to use something else for Clay for some data enrichment. But don't start there. Right, start with the basics.
Yeah.
I always tell folks like, look, I was like, I'm just trying to teach you how to dribble, and you're looking at me like I'm asking you to dunk from the free throw line. I just want you to be able to dribble the ball without it hitting you in the face. So
You'd mentioned a lot of companies are so focused on all the things that they can do with AI instead of the impact it's going to have on their business. And do you think that maybe stems from, say, a year or two ago when AI was just becoming huge, ChatGPT just hit the market, people are all talking about it. People jumped headfirst into it without really thinking about where they should put it in their business, what problem it's going to solve. Do you think now that people are stuck in a position where they can't go back now and think more about it step by step? Where should we start?
yeah, I think there's a couple of things. One, these C-suite leaders, we're here in Vegas, they have to have a better poker face. Like, you can't just showcase all your excitement, not thinking about the human element and the impact. And so these folks are very excited. These boards are very excited. They want to go tell the public, hey, this is what we're doing, right? So you have this excitement level from a business perspective, because this is the first time in my business career where there is a technology that I can credibly say can both grow my revenue and shrink my cost structure at the exact same time. A lot of people have promised that with automation and this and that. This is the first time I've actually seen a credible technology that can do both, right? So there is, bravo, there's opportunity, there's a reason to be excited. So thing one is, okay, just tone down the excitement a little bit. Thing two is, it is now the expectation. You can't walk that back, because that is the expectation, not just one, the market sophistication, so the consumer expectation, the experience is better. So I'm already expecting that. I don't care what you want it to do. My expectation going forward is this type of experience that I get. If your tool or technology does not have that, then you don't have me as a customer, right? Then you have the outside pressure of the FOMO, right? These 10 companies in my same space are doing this. Why are we not doing this, right? And so, but I think at the heart of it is, we do have to take a step back, right? We came into this year, everybody say this is going to be the year of the agent, right? And agentic workflow and this and that. And you have a lot of different, not a lot of success with a lot of companies at scale doing this, right? And now people are saying, okay, it's not just hallucinations. It's like, what is the true cost of this thing? what happens when, imagine being in a conversation with a CFO and you're trying to go get budget. You're like, how much does it cost? Well, could be a little bit, could be a lot, I don't know. And the agent may decide on its own that it needs to go down this path that maybe it didn't need to go, and now it's just blown through our entire budget because they went down this rabbit hole, right? And so, but just going back, I do think that we have, because of that, it's given a little bit of air cover for people to take a step back and say, all right, the agents are clearly not where we thought they would be at this point, right? Even though, and at that point, there is a level of, I don't like the word hype. I feel like that, I don't know when hype became a negative thing, right? But rappers always had a hype man. That wasn't a negative thing, right? Yeah. I didn't think, and so where's the roadmap? I do think that they were going to get there. These companies, these abilities to do these things, I think it's going to be more innate within the large language models themselves, right? And so any new entrant that is starting to come in now, and I'm like, oh man, I don't know. Maybe you're the one that makes it and gets acquired, right? But I do think that we do have a moment where I say, look, take a step back. Again, let's get folks trained up. Let's understand what you could do, right? It's the same thing when I do a lot of consulting. I start with the end in mind. What are your business goals, right? And let's work backwards from there. Gen AI might be the right solution. Machine learning and predictive analytics may be the right solution. Going offshore, nearshore might be the right solution. Not doing that at all might be the right solution, right? But you can't start with the premise that we're just going to layer in AI, right? The other thing is that I have an allergic reaction to the phrase change management. I know that's what it is. I call it AI adoption or upskilling, whatever you want to call it, right? You owe it to yourselves, to your employees, to your business to understand how are you going to change the organization. And I always say you go people, process, platform, in that order always. Does not matter what the platform or the technology is on the back end. You have to upskill your people. You have to do the gap analysis, understand what can they do, right? You have to take a hard look at, do you have the right people that can get to that goal where you want to go? From a process perspective, you can't just layer in AI to an existing process. That doesn't make any sense. And people are like, oh, we layered this on and actually it was more work. Like, yeah, you had 10 steps. If you would have used it correctly, your process could have been shortened to 5 steps. Out of an agentic workflow, you meet back over here, human in the loop, and then you produce the outcome that you wanted. But you were a solution in search of a problem versus the other way around, right? And so that's why I try to coach folks on, this is a different form of digital transformation, but go back to the basics, right?
Compared to last year, this year I'm seeing a lot more people talk about regulation, ethics. How much do you see people actually putting that into practice compared to just talking about it?
When you're talking regulation, you're talking internal compliance and governance? Are you talking about a state level, federal level?
More internal, as people are trying to figure out how to implement this in their workflows, how to get people to use it, whether they should have an AI policy.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell folks first, there's a couple of things. One, start with your data policy. Like, you already have a data policy. I'm like, I was talking to a company and they were like, well, what is your AI policy? I don't know. What is your data policy? Like, how is that any different? Because what you're really asking me is how am I going to use your data? So let's just go back to the data policy and then let's have a conversation. Mm-hmm. That's thing one. Thing two is I say, you guys can't have internal AI councils with no one on the council that knows AI. I was like, you're just going to get back to you're basically going to point to the IT person, the legal person, right? Whoever created your data policy, and you're going to default to that. And most companies, when I've seen, they've taken that approach and not have either an outside person. And I'm not talking you have to hire a full-time person, but at least have some type of fractional, AI member, right, that understands what's happening. The other good thing about having someone from the outside is you don't have the internal baggage and political infighting. A lot of times when I'm doing consulting, folks will say, it's like, well, I feel like that was a therapy session for us. And it was. You guys don't talk, right? And I was like, you have similar interests, but not aligned interests. And there's a fundamental difference between similar interests and aligned interests. Mm-hmm. And so you have to get folks aligned. You have to have some level of governance and counsel, because that's one of the first things that people ask me is like, what is our policy, right? What is our governance, right? How do we make sure that we're compliant for our customers, for our employees? And those are real issues and real challenges. But you should probably start there, right? And nail some of those things down, right? Because what employees also want to understand is transparency. They want to understand how you're using this, right? Because this is there's a much deeper level of intimate information that's happening when you're talking to the model versus I'm just, doing a Google search, right? And I tell folks that all the time. I was like, when you're having this conversation, there's a transcript of everything that you have. behind the scenes. Everything that you're talking about to this thing, right? So I'm not just seeing what sites did you go to, right? If I'm in IT, you're going to see every single conversation. I don't think people know or recognize that happens.
Yeah.
And so you need to be transparent about what you're doing with that, right? And again, you can anonymize that. You can I'm like, don't use that against people, right? I have the same kind of view when it comes to customer facing websites, right? I said in the very near future, I'm not going to be hunting and pecking around your menu items to dig around your website. I'm going to have a conversation with your brand. Mm-hmm. And that's how you should probably want, as someone that's built websites for clients and for myself. There's no richer data than understanding how someone was actually talking and conversing with your brand. I'm not guessing, well, they downloaded this thing. I think they clicked on insights, right? I'm like, what are you talking about? I know exactly what they think about us, right? I know exactly what pain points they have. And so that just creates a different opportunity. But you first have to understand the market, understand where this technology is going.
Shifting gears just a little bit, because you mentioned about having a conversation with a brand rather than navigating the website. With the agentic web, I've heard people are saying that eventually we're going to have a passive web where we're not even searching, our
Correct.
Agents are searching for us. Do you think that's going to happen?
100%. That's why I started beginning of the year in January. I repositioned Walk West to be an AI fluent human experiences agency that does the three things well. Seen, heard, cited by humans and machines alike for maximum results. People are like, humans and machines? Like, yeah, it's not going to just be us. There's going to be an AX element to it. There's going to be an agentic experience, right? And then folks like, oh, well, I put the robots TXT in so they won't crawl. I'm like, so you're trying to not show up anywhere.
Yeah, it's not a good idea.
Like, that's not a good idea either, right? I get why we did that in years past, but if you want to show up there, you probably want them to also crawl, right? But it becomes another challenging thing, right? I don't know if you remember seeing earlier this year about Wikipedia, and they were talking about how they have different caching models and different cost structures so basically, we call it Pareto principle, 80-20 rule. 80% of stuff they put in this other thing, because a lot of people aren't actually hitting those sites, so they can have a different, place where this sits. And then there's the 20% where we're going, an average user where, is going. But the large language model wants to consume it all. So now they have all of this agentic experience hitting the thing that they put over here. And now they're paying through the nose because it's searching and it's creating usage uptick. So now their whole data center strategy for over here, the cost structure, and it was like one of those unintended consequences that people don't really think about. I didn't create my site expecting, I was creating it for Michelle and for Greg, not 1,000 versions of Michelle, 1,000 versions of Greg. And now I got to think about that and what is it doing, right? And then, does that count as a metric? Right? How many agents, how many times did they do what? Did they buy anything? Did they just take my information? I don't know what to think of that, right? So then someone's going to show up like, look how many visits we got. And they're like, yeah, only 10% of those were human, right? And then you don't know. Like, do you know if it's human? I have no clue at that point.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's a different thing where people are trying to trace back identity, back to these things. So there's a lot of different, but and that's the thing where I keep saying, you have to understand how this thing is impacting your business and impacting how we've grown businesses historically, not just the cool things that you can make on the other end of it. So.
Yeah, I think that's going to take a while. I think there's a lot of confusion out there. And as things just keep shifting and changing, I think it's going to take a while for people to really kind of get the hang of how to go about this.
I think how to go about it will take a while. I think the pain that will be felt the next 6 months is going to force people to start to learn faster. Right? My parents on both sides were, their parents, my grandparents were farmers. Right? My mom's side was tobacco farmers. Right? I always tell folks, they had over a decade to see the writing on the wall to try to upskill and change course of what they were going to do for their careers, for their farm, and moved to corn. And then we did other stuff, right? Then we completely got out of the tobacco, space. You don't have 10 years to figure this out. What business, so set aside individual upskilling. What business has 10 years to figure out all of this? Well, at that point, you're out of business.
Yeah.
I was at the HubSpot Innovation Summit in San Francisco a couple months back. And one of the things they kept saying is, if you don't have an AI first strategy in 2025, you might not have a business in 2030. And that is real.
So do you think fear is preventing some of these companies from tackling the problem of AI in the right way?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there is some level of deer in the headlights, right, scenario. I don't think that they would publicly phrase it as fear, right? I think folks will say, well, we're taking a cautious approach to it, right? And the problem with that, though, and I had a guest, Alec Coughlin, brilliant guy on just a brilliant person as it relates to AI. He's been deep into it for the last 8-9 years, building his own stuff and his thought leadership. But we were having a candid conversation about, we were talking about the Shopify CEO and some other CEOs, right? Where I said, hey, I think there's a snowball effect happening where we're quickly moving from carrot to stick, right? Because, talk about curious, talk about all these fun things we're going to do, but then there's the stick. And we were saying that the motivation behind the stick is not it's the fear of becoming obsolete. It's the fear of walking off the cliff. It's the fear of not having a business, right? And so I even tell our own employees, I'm like, you have to understand the motivation as it relates to these folks, right? And so I would say the front half of the year, it was a lot of fear of what these tools can do, how disruptive it's going to be to my team and this and that. Now on the back half of the year the fear is, oh shit, am I going to be around in 2026, 27, 2028, right? Neither one of those are good reasons to do nothing, right? That's the deer in the headlights and stop. But I will say that pain, as it starts to amp up, it's going to be more of a carrot stick situation as more people are losing jobs or jobs being displaced. There's going to be a level of fear and anxiety that's going to lead to action, right? Because there's no just sticking your head in the sand. It's coming for everything, right? And so I do think that it's going to motivate people in a different way. And my hope is that through this level of kind of collective tragedy, if you will, that people are going to come together more quickly and say, look, I always tell folks all the time, it's like, you don't have to worry about AI replacing you if your company goes out of business. Y'all all being replaced.
Yeah.
I was like, you need to understand that fundamentally when we talk about carrot to stick. I'm like, if your company goes out of business, you all lost your jobs. AI didn't replace you, right? It replaced your whole company. And in some places, it may replace your whole industry.
Yeah.
Right. And that is very challenging and I get it and I understand it. And I have a lot of compassion for it, right? What I don't have the compassion for is that people just ignoring those realities.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this is just hype. This is nothing different. I'm like, how many people got to lose their jobs or go out of business and so that's the critical point where I'm just trying to figure out, when do we get to that level of inertia of pain, not opportunity? Right now, there's still excitement on the opportunity side, but you're going to get to a level of pain that there's going to be no choice. It's like, hey, we either figure this thing out or we just won't be around. Mm-hmm. And so that's here. But by the end of this year, I think it's going to be crystal clear going into 2026 that people are going to have to change how they think about all of this.
I think there's a real human element to it, not just the fear of losing your job, but more like losing your sense of self, your sense of identity. I mean, we tie so much of our identities to what we do in our work. And I don't know if you saw about the dock worker strike earlier in the year.
Your what?
The dock worker strike.
Okay. No.
And part of what their issue was not just that they were worried about being replaced by AI, but they're saying, we're not going to be able to pass these jobs down now to our children. It is a big part of who we are, who our families are. And so I think that's going to be a big part of the conversation too.
I don't disagree. And it goes back to what I said about my grandparents and my parents started in the tobacco industry. Mm-hmm. My grandparents literally had a tobacco farm. And as a kid, we would plow tobacco and roll it up and let it dry out, that whole process. Somehow most of my family, my parents included, didn't smoke. My granddad, which is weird, right? You're in that industry. But then my dad, one of his jobs was working at a cigarette paper manufacturing company, which was an extension of the same kind of tobacco industry, right? But again, they had the same thing. I'm sure at some point, because my granddad had acquired a bunch of land, that he was going to pass that down and the farm going to keep passing down. Oh, yeah. But that's just not how life works. That's not how evolution and these revolutions work. And so I get it, but we've been there. That's happened before, right? It's a different version of it, and it's affecting a lot more industries. But this isn't new or different, right, from that perspective. Now, the speed of which is challenging, because some of those same folks that were trying to pass it down are losing their job in the moment. So imagine if you were the farmer that screwed passing it down, you can't even do the thing while you're still living in that generation.
Yeah.
That's the problem. That's the future shock and the loss aversion that people are having to come to grips with. And it is a challenge. And I am very empathetic. I have a lot of compassion for folks in that. It still doesn't change the reality of where we're going. And that's my tough love to folks. I'm like, I understand. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
Because you can't just stand in the middle of the road.
Yeah, time to stop being a deer in the headlights.
It's time to stop being a deer in the headlights.
Well, thank you so much for talking to me. It's been great hearing
Good seeing you.
not just about your insights, but your experience, what you're seeing with clients too.
Yeah, it's a brave new world. We'll get there. So, thanks.
Thanks for joining us on AI Voice or Victim. If you want to stay competitive in the age of AI, start now. Take one insight from today's episode and put it into practice in the next 24 hours. Make sure to follow us, share your thoughts, and subscribe for more actionable AI insights. See you next time.